sponsored in part by Pediatric Associates of Dallas. Pediatric Associates of Dallas has been providing excellence in pediatric medicine since 1971. PAD has locations in Dallas and Plano and is now open 7 days a week because taking care of kids is what we do.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Welcome to the Empower Dyslexia show and podcast. I am Rachel Chambers.
And I'm Stephen Yearout.
And we're here to help you be a better informed partner in education. On this podcast, we discuss dyslexia and related disorders, interventions, research, and we also discuss education policy at the state and federal levels. We also have special guests and experts in the field to come and talk to us. So... welcome to the show today, y'all.
Welcome to the show. As you can see, we're both in our blue T-shirts supporting Autism Awareness
Month.
Autism Awareness Month. Please reach out and learn something about the struggles that people with autism go through, and that way you can be better informed.
Better informed, and it's better to know about everything, really. I mean, how to help people with dyslexia, how to help people with autism, people with struggles. Exactly.
That way you can have a little more compassion for them and understand kind of what they're going through, right? Mm-hmm. So big news. Like we tell you every week, you can now see us and hear us on all of our favorite apps here: Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitch, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all of our favorite ways to get our content. So please reach out.
Tune in.
Make sure that you subscribe, write us a review if you find this information beneficial.
Yeah, like us on Facebook, subscribe. So today we have a very special guest. Her name is Daphne Corder, and she's down in Austin, Texas. She is a dyslexia advocate, also a social worker, and she is joining us today via Skype. So hello, Daphne.
Hi.
There she is.
Well, let's start off by saying happy birthday, Daphne.
Yes, happy birthday. Thank you for joining us on your birthday.
Special day.
Yeah.
We're so happy to have
you. Thank you. There's nothing more fun to do than to get out there and advocate. I love doing this. So even though it was on my birthday, I jumped at the chance
to share
what I can to help people out.
And you're very good at it, so I might add. So we're lucky to have you. So today we're talking about dyslexia intervention and what it means to deliver the intervention with Fidelity.
Yeah, a lot of times we hear Fidelity. We hear that word thrown around. Oh, you have to do it with Fidelity. You have to do it with Fidelity. And a lot of people don't understand what Fidelity means, right? They don't understand why.
I didn't know what it meant when I first heard it.
Why you have to do that with Fidelity. Mm-hmm. And number two, you don't understand what that actually means from a parental perspective to know what my child is receiving as far as services go, correct? Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about what it means when you say give an intervention with Fidelity. So can you take that away, Daphne?
Sure. Basically what it means is just doing the program the way it was prescribed. If a doctor, for example, gives you medication for high blood pressure, you wouldn't be taking it, and he tells you to take it every day, you need to take it every day for it to work. It might be the greatest medication, and it's definitely going to help prevent heart attacks and all the other complications. And so if you had only taken it once a week, it probably wouldn't help you. You'd end up in the emergency room. And so the same thing goes for dyslexia intervention. These programs, many of them are researched, evidence supports the efficacy. These things work, but they've been tested to work because they were given a certain amount of times every day. For example, most dyslexia programs are going to be 4 to 5 days a week for anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. And so if that is not done the way it's prescribed or done with Fidelity, it's not going to work.
Gotcha. Well, that's very important. You don't want to waste your child's time, and the teacher's time by only giving it once a week. You can say you're doing it, but you're not really doing it if you're not giving it the way it's instructed. Correct?
Well, it's developed. It's
yes,
developed
and the
a
other
certain
thing
way.
The other thing to understand is that, remember, with all the research, with what we know about dyslexia, over on one side of your brain is where most kids are reading, and their part of the brain that's lighting up is on the other side. And so it's got to travel. We're changing the brain. And in order to do that, it's got to be done every day, scaffolded. You'll hear a lot of that, sequential. So it builds on it, and you have to have a little bit more every day to make it effective. And so if it's only done once a week, your child isn't going to remember it. They're going to forget it. It's got to be done every day, just like I said, given with bringing up the same topics over and over, trying to rewire that brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that point up. We had talked, on one of our past shows about having to build those neural pathways back, and that's the main thing. If you're not doing it consistently, you're never going to build those neural pathways back to take that language piece of it and start
to make it work effectively. Yeah. So what are the common problems that you see or that you've heard about school districts, not delivering the intervention correctly?
Okay, so some of the things that I see are that they don't have the right program. Maybe they've purchased a program that's for struggling readers and not necessarily for someone with dyslexia. They may have purchased a program that they say, oh, it's research, but it's research for children that were just struggling and not really showing the more severe components having those issues with dyslexia. And so sometimes they just don't have the right program, or they have a one-size-fits-all mentality and they say, oh, you have dyslexia, this is what we do. Well, as you know, there's a lot of components in dyslexia with fluency, phonemic awareness issues, decoding problems, working memory, rapid automatic naming. All these parts go into it, and some children can be weaker in some areas and stronger in some areas. So the program has to fit the specific individual needs of that child. And if the school is just buying one program, they're going to be missing out on a lot of children. So number one is they need to buy a wide range of programs and have the right training by the teachers to be able to diagnostically teach and find out, okay, this program's working for them, or it's helping in one area of their weaknesses in dyslexia, or maybe we need to move on to another concept. And the school system, like I said, they don't usually, sometimes they might just buy one program, and that's not going to be enough. Some of the other issues, I don't know if you want to break them up, but that would be issue number one. Mm-hmm. Do you all want to go through them individually and have questions about that? Or maybe I'll just go through all of them, and if you have any questions about that. The second would be that a lot of the dyslexia programs, remember how we said they are weekly and they build upon concepts. Well, a lot of these programs are built so that they're learning one concept and going on to the next concept, to the next, to the next. And if during the school calendar year, not everybody gets diagnosed at the beginning of the year, gets put in the class and can start the classes throughout the year. Some might get identified. Some of them might get identified in the middle of the year, and there's already a class going on, and they're already in concept 10, and your child's coming in. And so sometimes they just put them in that classroom. They say, okay, well, if you have dyslexia, we're just going to add you into that classroom. Well, the rest of the class is a lot further along. So sometimes it's because of the calendar days of the school and when they're identified. It has to do with maybe the lack of the planning. The schools really need to say, what are we going to do with children that we get that are in a different level? How can we group them appropriately so everybody's learning at the same pace? So that's another one. Let's see.
Hopefully, I don't mean to interrupt, but hopefully, since they're going to start screening all children at kindergarten and first grade, then maybe they'll start their intervention all at the same time, because they're all kind of finding out in kindergarten, first grade that, oh, we may need to get further evaluated. I'm hoping. What do you think?
Well, I think that's the ultimate goal. Now, whether that's happening, I mean, as you know,
yeah, that's state legislature.
TEA
but we'll
has
see.
already said, hey, we're not going to be able to accommodate and make sure that we've got child find put together in place with Fidelity. So, that's the ultimate goal. But, what Daphne's saying, I hear a lot of from schools or from parents that their child gets identified at some point. And a lot of times it's middle school kids, right? They're getting identified later. And you've got one, dyslexia therapist or, academic language therapist on that campus, hopefully. And, they don't have the bandwidth to start over with another child. And we hear that, well, they're going to cover this again and again and again. So we'll just start them here and then just keep going. But with the definition of Fidelity,
you start from the beginning.
Go to the end. Mm-hmm. You can't just assume that this child knows these skills that are going to be taught. Correct, Daphne?
Yes. And also the other issue is that those teachers sometimes can get pulled out of the classroom. Maybe some of them, the teachers, they're having them do other jobs. And so they say, oh, you need to come in today to help crossing guard or something with lunch duty, and they pull them out, or the children are being pulled out for other things. And so they miss. And so there's a lot of that happens where they're just not doing it. Maybe they get busy and they're doing it once a week, twice a week. I always tell parents to ask their kids, oh, did you see Mrs. So-and-so, whoever the reading teacher is, and to keep track on your own calendar and make sure that they're being seen regularly. Now, of course, occasionally there's going to be issues and your child may get sick, the teacher might get sick, but there has to be a commitment by the school to really create a place where dyslexia intervention is sacred and that teachers are not going to be overwhelmed with other things to do and not be able to provide those classes as they're supposed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is kind of off topic, but that's also the difference between a 504 and an IEP. 504 doesn't have a mandated time that you're going to provide this amount of times, this amount of day, and it's not in writing. Obviously, it's just, hey, you're going to have whatever program they're providing. And that's that. And like Daphne was saying, that teacher can get pulled. Now, if it was under special education, they have to do those intervals that they've set forth in that IEP. So that's another way that these schools have been able to get around pulling that teacher or not having that student go to that class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, they're still, I mean, they have to provide it with Fidelity. The handbook even talks about that. I'll go ahead and read something from there. It says, a dyslexia program must be delivered in accordance with the way the program was designed to be delivered. Therefore, when a district or charter school has purchased a program, the amount of time for instruction and intervention reflected in the author's and publisher's program mandates the amount of time required to deliver the instruction. And they even put an example, 45 minutes, 5 times a week. And that's on page 89 of the Dyslexia Handbook. So a lot of these issues are discussed in the handbook about those important issues in making sure that the programs are done properly. So you can always refer to that, and that handbook is for any dyslexia program, whether your child has a 504 or an IEP. They have to be given the program with Fidelity as the way. And that, I will tell you another thing. I have heard a lot of people say, a lot of schools else say, oh, well, the handbook doesn't say that we need a cult or we need some kind of licensed therapist to do this. And I always respond, you're correct. There's not a mandate that dyslexia teachers are certified. However, it really is in there indirectly in that the publishers of those companies, of those programs, the Wilson, the Take Flight, the BLS, they mandate that the person is trained and has certain credentials. And so if the handbook is saying you have to do a program the way the author intended it, you're indirectly saying that those people have to be licensed. If you're in Wilson, you can't do their program unless you've got licensed and trained through their program. If you are doing BLS, you have to get trained. And so, and the same thing with Take Flight. So eventually those programs, when you look into them, they're going to require somebody that has the same level as a cult. So in essence, you're going to need a cult.
Okay.
Right. So we've been talking a lot about programs. We've mentioned a couple of them on there. Could you run down a couple of the
top
program?
3?
Yeah, top 3 programs that we see, at least here in Texas. And I'm sure, I mean, these programs are used countrywide or nationwide, but these are the 3 main ones that we see a lot of.
Yeah.
So I do want to qualify that even the 3 top programs that we have in Texas offer other programs. And this kind of goes to that first question about why it's done wrong in the Fidelity in some schools. And that is because people throw around the words like, oh, I'm trained in Take Flight, or I'm trained in Wilson, or I'm trained in BLS. But even those companies, like, for example, Wilson is a common program here. It's a wonderful program, but they have 3 different programs. Some of them you need a license for, some of them you don't, or I shouldn't say license, but training to do, training that's required by Wilson. Some of them, like, for example, we'll start with Wilson. If you want to put that screen up.
Jason, could you put up the Wilson screen? Or slide?
So with Wilson, they have one that's called Foundations that anybody can order off the internet and purchase. And that doesn't require training. Many people do offer training for that, but it doesn't require you to have the training before you use it. And that's really for kinder through third grade, but just for the those are at-risk readers. So that it's going to have a lot of good kind of phonemic awareness, a lot of the basics that children will need in those early grades. But it is not a comprehensive dyslexia program with all the components that are required and state in the handbook that is needed for a good dyslexia program. So that's foundations. Then just words and the Wilson reading system. Then you're getting, second grade for the Wilson reading program until 12th grade. And those are the Wilson reading system. You have to have a level 2 practitioner license through Wilson. And I think right now the only training is offered by one of our regional centers. Judy Butler does the training for Wilson in the state of Texas. I don't think they have anyone else, but you are required to become a level 2 practitioner. That's very similar. It's practically the equivalent of a cult. And they also have level 1 practitioner, which is equal to a CALP. And those two programs, they will have, if your teacher says they're doing Wilson at your school, you need to find out what the program is that they're doing that is Wilson. And Wilson, if you go on their website and you let them know what city you live in, they'll give you a list of all the providers, everyone who's been trained in Wilson.
Level 2 providers?
Yeah, they'll give you a copy of all the level 2 practitioners, all the level 1 practitioners. They'll send you a list of who's trained in Texas. So if a teacher tells you we're doing Wilson here at the school, you just call Wilson or email them. They have a section on their webpage, and you just say, hey, I live in this area code. Who are all the licensed people that are in this area? And that teacher that you have should be on that list. If she is not on that list, then they are not providing the program from somebody who is properly trained. And that's something that you could let Wilson know about. And you can also let the school know that that person's not on that list, that they need to either give them more training or just answer what the reason is that they're not on that list.
That's
you should make sure that that's the case.
All right. Yes. So we talked about Wilson. What's one of the next?
The next one we'll do Take Flight.
Okay.
And I just want to say there's one somewhat of a correction. I think I gave you a slide on that.
Yes.
Okay. So Take Flight was developed by Scottish Rite, and they are it's equivalent to having a CULT. They have to be a certified academic language therapist. It's going to be 7th grade or 7 years. I'm sorry, not 7th grade. 7 years old or 2nd grade and older. They need to be taught for 4 days a week for 60 minutes or 5 days a week for 45 minutes. So there's no more than 6 children in the class.
So let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there, Daphne. That piece of it right there is really important. No more than 6 in a class. One of the things that we're seeing in the districts is with the onslaught, with the amount of kids that are being identified now, those class sizes are starting to grow.
Fill up.
And we need to make sure that we're asking, how many kids are in my child's intervention class. And more important than that, I'll tell you, not just how many kids are in the class, but hopefully they're equally on the same level. I heard from some parents that
my child says it's really easy. They've already gone through it. Or there's a child in there with a lot of disruptions. Maybe for them, it's so hard for them. Maybe it's too advanced for somebody and they start acting out. And so all that hurts the fidelity of the program if you can't get through it. The way that it works in Take Flight, and this is one slight correction to that slide, actually the trainer of Take Flight here in Austin said, well, they don't have to master the program before they move on, but you do have to circle back to it. And that is a time I've heard some teachers, I'll say, well, how are they doing on their mastery checks or kind of their progress monitoring? And they'll say, well, they didn't get that concept. And I'll ask, okay, if they didn't get that concept, when did you go back and reteach it? Because Take Flight doesn't make you master it before you move on. BLS does make you master it before you move on. But Take Flight makes you circle back to it if a child doesn't understand it. And so sometimes if that teacher's not given time in her day to go back and reteach a concept that somebody didn't get, then that's not being done with fidelity, and it's not going to work as well. They have to have it. They have to have a base. And that's why you see so many people go, oh, well, Take Flight didn't work for them. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a good program. Well, you have to really make sure that that's the case. Was it done properly? Did they ever circle back to the basics? I know lots of parents who had to, including my own child, they forgot some concepts. After they did Take Flight, they had to go back and visit certain concepts that they were taught in Take Flight so that they could, because it hindered them from moving on in some higher level reading skills. So that is something. Don't think that just because your child went through Take Flight, everything's okay.
Absolutely.
You have to go back. You might have to revisit some of those topics, some of those concepts.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about House?
Okay.
That's the next
one.
So
House is a wonderful organization, a nonprofit in Houston, and they developed their program called Basic Language Skills, and some people call it BLISS, or BLS.
Okay.
And so that one is also a dyslexia program that requires that a person have a CULT. Or that they are a CULT. So that's their training will get you up to where you could sit for the test to be a CULT. So again, that's comprehensive, systematic, sequential, multisensory, just like how I was saying, how it kind of builds on each other.
Is it kind of like math? Are all these programs kind of like math? How you get you learn your addition, subtraction, then you move on, and is it kind of like that? You get a foundation and you just build on it?
You get a foundation and you go from simple concepts and, single syllable words to multisyllabic words. Mm-hmm. And so that's why if you don't know how to break things down early on and you don't know the basics of really being able to take apart words, put together words, all those what they're called advanced phonemic awareness skills, if they don't have a good base on that, they'll never become fluent readers. And that is something that I see. I have a lot of parents call me, especially for the ones that have had intervention like Take Flight or maybe BLS. Once they get to middle school, they'll say, well, they got the intervention, but their comprehension is low or their fluency. Some of that could be due to the fact that maybe they really didn't get a good base and they weren't able to really run through words quickly because they couldn't really decode them. They were, as the grades get higher and the vocabulary words become bigger and multisyllabic words, if they don't know how to break apart and read words that are new and long and difficult with new concepts and all that, they're gonna be slowing down. like reading with a bunch of speed bumps. And if you read with a bunch of speed bumps and you have to stop at every word to take it apart, that's going to affect your comprehension. So if somebody's not understanding something, you don't go, oh, well, I just need to work on comprehension. You still back and say, why are they not comprehending? And a good way to test that is to have them, if they are reading something and they don't understand it well, and then you read to them and they understand it, then we know it's a decoding issue, because the reading part's out of the equation and now their comprehension is good. But if they're reading something, they don't understand it, and you read it to them and they don't understand it, then we're looking at other language disorders. So that's just something to understand. I hear that a lot about problems with comprehension in later years. And then sometimes the comprehension could be because they got identified late, they hate reading, they're not reading all the books with all the new words and learning, getting that rich language and learning those big words and vocabulary. And so that is going to hold them back later on.
You're not dealing with that emotional piece of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
let's run through the questions to ask about dyslexia program your school is using, so parents know the right questions to ask.
Right. I would say, first of all, you want to ask them the name of the program.
Jason,
what is
did you
it
pull
called?
up that slide as well?
There you go.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
So not just, is it Wilson? Which program in Wilson? So the other thing is, what specifically does the program help with? Sometimes after, like, there's a program called Rewards that helps with fluency and comprehension, but it's intended for something to be supplementary for once, somebody has already got the basics. So you want to make sure that the program that may be great, but that might not be what's broken, so to speak, of in the reading for your child. That might not be an issue with them. So a program could be great, but it's got to actually address the specific needs. Does it work with fluency if your child has trouble with fluency? Does it work with decoding, and does it work with comprehension? The other thing is, what age or level is it designed to help? If they are using a program that's intended for older kids or for younger kids, that's not really going to help. It's got to be appropriate and for the right age. The other thing, like we've been talking about a lot, is the teacher trained in that specific program. Was this something that they saw somebody else using it and then they got the training? How skilled are they at doing this? The other thing is to ask, how do I know if this program's working? How often will I get progress reports?
Huge
and
question.
I will tell you guys, please do not, if you have an IEP, do not put on there under measurement of the goal. Like if you want their fluency to improve, you have to have an objective test to measure it. You don't say teacher, if they're going to do a teacher-made test, well, we better see what that teacher-made test. But there's a lot of great things out there that you can use as the progress monitoring. BLS has their own mastery checks that does it for you. Ask to get those copies. If it's take flight, ask them, how do you monitor their progress, and can I see those every time you do them? So you want to make sure that it's working. And then how often is that program supposed to be given? Make sure that it's done as long as the program prescribed. All these things in here, all these questions right here are questions that are part of your rights as parents. They're also discussed again in the handbook as a guide for teachers to know that they should be doing all those things. And so the other thing is, if you don't know and you're not sure, go with your gut. If something's not right, go with your gut and ask a lot of questions and even call the makers of the program. If it's something you've never heard, go look at it online. Go call the company.
Stephen did.
I sure did.
Yeah.
I called everybody that was involved, and I wanted to know, what are you doing? Like you were saying, what are you doing specifically to help my child's needs? And if it's not addressing those needs, you're not going to be using that program with my child. It's just that simple.
Yeah. Well, so Daphne, thank you so much for joining us today. That's all the time that we have for today. I wanted to let everybody know if you want to ask Daphne some more questions or her contact information, she has a website available, which is daphnecorder.com. So DaphneCorder.com. Don't hate me because I can't read very well, but
we'll put a link to that. We'll put a link on our website also.
Definitely. Yeah. And like we always like to say when we close, please make sure you get your child tested. You're going to be glad to know what's going on with your child while they're struggling. Find that out and see what you can do to help them. We have templates for the letters to get started to ask your school to evaluate your child on our website, which is empowerdyslexia.com. So please go there and check us out.
Empowerdyslexia.info.
Oh my gosh. Dyslexia. What is it? Empowerdyslexia.info.
Her dyslexia
I need more coffee this morning.
Also, remember, you can hear us on all of our favorite platforms: iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, YouTube Live, and Facebook Live.
Yeah, awesome.
We'll see you next Thursday.
See you next Thursday.